Hello there, it's Carly with the Expat Focus Podcast. If you're not receiving our monthly newsletters, it's easy to get on the list. Simply head to expatfocus.com/newsletter to sign up. We recently spoke about how to leave America following the US presidential election. We're flipping it in this episode, speaking about how to move to America in 2025 with attorney Mena Maimone. Now, you're an immigrant to the USA yourself, along with your mom. Can you tell me first off, what motivated you to move to the States?
Well, if you've ever been to South Florida, it's captivating. We came down 7 years ago on a girls' trip and we just fell in love with it. The weather, the people were very nice, the opportunities. And we went back to Canada and we were like, let's get out of here. Let's go to Florida. So I would say, like I said, opportunities, weather, the taxes, everything was just there and everything kind of lined up. So that's what motivated us to come down.
And in your experience, what's a key motivator for people moving to the USA at the moment?
I think if you're talking about people coming from Canada, Canadians, then it would be what I just mentioned. But if they're coming from other parts of the world, I think it's the American dream. The opportunity that exists here is like no other. If you are a hard worker, an entrepreneur, you can really make a great life for yourself here. And so I think everyone around the world knows that and they want to take part in that. And there's a true sense of pride to be here. So it's a beautiful place to be and a wonderful place to grow yourself personally and financially or, you know, otherwise.
We've spoken on this podcast before to Mia, who came to the USA from Australia on an O1 visa, and she recently shared her experience of going through the green card lottery successfully. But if people are not especially talented in a certain area or they don't really want to leave their application to move to the USA to chance, what are
Mhm.
some more common pathways for foreigners looking to move to America?
I think one of the most common pathways is the E2 visa. That's an investor visa. So if you're open to starting a small business or buying a business, it depends where you're coming from. But I can talk about Toronto. The requirements for Toronto are that you invest $80 to $100,000, that you make all the purchases before we apply, and that your funds come from a legitimate source. So long as you meet those requirements, you can come to the US on your E2. Your spouse can come and have an open work permit. And in Toronto, it's about a 94% success rate. I've never had a denial, and I have a money back guarantee on that visa because of the success associated to it. So that one, if you really don't want to leave it to chance, that's a great visa and a great pathway. And you can continue to renew it indefinitely, so long as the business is running and profitable. Other than that, there are employment-based visas, but a lot of them do require, of course, an employer unless you're doing a self-petition. So let's say you have a high level of education and you really stand out in your field. Maybe you won awards or you've been recognized. There's a visa called EB2 NIW, National Interest Waiver, where you can petition for yourself. And you do have to have a strong profile and a strong background and a career, but that's a good visa as well if you want to take the reins and submit your own petition. Other than that, there is also EB3 that doesn't require a lottery. So EB3, you do require an employer. They would have to go through the labor certification process to show that they couldn't hire an American to do the job. And there's multiple points that we'd have to go through with the employer. But at around 3 to 4 year mark, you would get your green card, and it's a direct path to green card. So that one is a great option as well. That doesn't involve a lottery.
I want to circle back to the visa through investment. You said $80 to $100,000, and you're starting your own business. Is there sort of a scope of what kind of business you can, plan to start in the US or anything like that?
It doesn't matter as long as you meet the three requirements, which are source of funds. So where'd you get the money? Is it from a legitimate source? Substantial investment, 80 to 100,000, and funds at risk. So you actually have to spend the money, buy the business, or incur startup costs before we can apply. So as long as you have those three, it doesn't matter what industry you're looking into.
And to keep that visa, your business does have to be successful or relatively successful.
So people ask me, how much do I have to make? Is there a number? No, there isn't. But when you apply for the visa in the first place, we do a business plan. So it's important that the business plan aligns with, that it's doable, that you can actually achieve the goals that you put in your business plan, because when it comes time to renewal, they're going to take a look at that and say, okay, what has this person fulfilled? Are they generating a profit, or are they just scraping by? If they're just scraping by, it's going to be hard to renew. So you have to be generating a profit, so be in a surplus. And usually they require by the end of the 5 years that you have at least one American employee.
Okay, so you need to be shown to be investing in the US and in personnel in the US as well.
Yes.
Now, the other visa you mentioned is if an American company is going to hire you. In your
Mhm.
experience of late, is that very common for US businesses to be looking abroad for people?
Depends on the industry, usually not. I have seen a lot in the healthcare industry though. So if you're a nurse, doctor, then there's definitely a good pathway for you. They tend to approve a lot of STEM. So if you're in it's something to do with STEM, then there's usually an employer that is willing to sponsor. But you never know. I can tell you a personal story. I went to law school with a lot of international students, some from Italy, some from Spain, Portugal, you name it. They were studying at my school. And because of the student visa, they were given a 1 year open work permit at the end of their studies. And during that time, some of them were able to build connections with, managing attorneys or law firms, and they were able to get sponsored on the H-1B. They were selected in the lottery, and they've been here ever since. So you can get lucky, especially if you're a student here or you have another way to be here, and you can kind of prove yourself and have that employer sponsor you.
Yeah, so you never know what connection you're going to make that's going to lead you to an opportunity.
That's right. Absolutely.
And what about between states? You're based in Florida. Is immigrating and planning to base yourself in Florida different to say if you immigrated and plan to base yourself in New York or California?
No, because immigration is federal. So it deals with the USCIS and the consulates around the world. So it doesn't matter what state you want to go to. You could even go to Alaska. We could send you to Alaska. So long as you want to come to the United States, we can help you.
Mena, in your experience, what is the most difficult part of the application process when you're applying for a US visa?
The most difficult part is that it can be tedious. So there's a lot of supporting documents that you're going to need to submit. The forms, it could be annoying. You have to go through all the forms and fill out all this information. So it's very time consuming and tedious. And then, sometimes if you don't get the right officer, they'll send a request for evidence and they'll say, we need even more. And so these kind of hurdles that get put in your way and the amount of documents that they require you to submit can sometimes be annoying for our clients. But the good thing is if you have a good attorney who explains things to you, who is patient, who's able to help you organize yourself, then it would be a much better experience, I think.
And obviously, you're a bit biased in this situation, but do you think an attorney is essential, or could you decide to go it alone in your application process?
It depends on what you're doing and your level of, I think, competence. So, for example, if you're going to do an E2 and you're going to go it alone, that's a horrible idea because there's certain things that are logical that you'd think, okay, this is logical. But we know through practice are not going to work. We know certain tricks, and if you run into certain hurdles, we know how to resolve them. So going the E2 route by yourself is not a good idea. If you need to renew your employment authorization document, it's a simple form, and you need to attach a couple supporting documents, sure, you could do that by yourself. It's not that complicated. And it also depends on the person. I have some clients who have a difficult time reading and writing English. So, it might be difficult for them to do that on their own.
And we're speaking at the end of 2024. So, what should you expect in terms of fees to help with your visa application on average?
Well, it depends on what visa you're looking to do. They range anywhere usually from $3,000 if you're doing a simple TN, for example, all the way up to 20,000 if you're doing an EB5, a very complex petition, or an
What is
EB2.
an EB5? What is that? That it's $20,000.
So it's a lot of work and it is a green card by investment. So the reason it's a lot of work is because there's 2 steps to it. We have to make the initial petition and then we have to do an adjustment of status if you're here physically in the United States. So an EB5 with $800,000, you can get your green card in 10 months, depending on where you were born, so long as you're not born in certain countries that have a backlog. So right now, that is the fastest pathway to get a green card, even faster than marrying a US citizen, which is shocking to some people.
So
And it has
10
been that.
months, 800,000, and I get a US green card.
That's right.
Okay. And faster than marrying someone.
It's faster than marrying someone. And how it works is there's actually 2 types of EB5s. So there's the $800,000 investment. It gets invested into a rural regional center. A regional center is a project. Like, for example, they're building this resort in Wyoming. It's a rural area, low employment area. And so $800,000 is sufficient. You would invest into this project and you can typically expect to have your money back in 3 to 5 years. So they basically use your money to finance this, to make money to finance this project. So that's the one way. And the other way is, let's say you're an entrepreneur and you have more than $1,050,000 to spend. You can start or buy your own business. You have to be able to employ at least 10 full-time US workers within a 2-year period. So you have both options, which both result in your green card. So it's a good option.
You said there are some countries with a backlog. What are the countries where there's going to be a longer wait at the moment?
So it is Mexico, India, China, and the Philippines.
Okay, Australia's okay.
Australia's okay. Yeah. We get all clumped into one Canada and Australia are together and they're current.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
So, say you're not from a backlog country, you're using an immigration attorney or an agency to support your application. What is the average wait time from when you apply to move to America to when you get the green light?
So it depends on what visa you're going for. So, for example, E2, you want to do an E2, you want to invest 80 to 100, start your own business. We can get that done in 3 to 6 months typically, depending on the client. Sometimes they take a bit longer, they have to find the right business. So it depends on them, but usually it's about 3 to 6 months. And they can come to the United States once that's been approved at the consulate in their country. In terms of EB5, the one that I just mentioned, that one has a adjustment of status, concurrent filing. So they could come to the United States as a visitor and they could just stay once they make the investment and we file for them. So it really depends on what category that would change how long you're waiting in your country.
So what are some common reasons why an application will be rejected?
So sometimes it's just the officer that you get and it's a matter of just refiling, and it depends on the type of visa.
When you say it's the officer that you get, do you mean maybe they're just having a bad day or they're not in a good mood, or?
So sometimes there are requirements that you would meet all of the requirements. We submit 500-600 pages of supporting documents and you just get the officer that is there to deny. There's no rhyme or reason. And if you're going to go into an appeal, there's about a 2% chance you're going to get approved on appeal. So you're better off just letting that denial happen and filing again, which is, it happens sometimes. Another reason you might get denied is if you're not upfront. So if you have a criminal background, for example, and you don't disclose that to us, and then we file the petition based on the assumption that you don't have a criminal record, and it would then get denied because you weren't being honest with the government.
And the government has a way of finding out, right? Like you can say no, but they're going to check.
They're going to check and it'll pop up. So usually if you have, like, I have clients who have, an arrest from 30 years ago and they were just being, silly and young and something happened and we're able to show the government, like, look, here's the full background fingerprint background check. It was dismissed or it was pardoned. It was 30 years ago. Totally fine. But if you go into it, I had another gentleman didn't tell me that he was recently arrested.
Oof.
And went into his interview and his family was all approved, but he was denied because he didn't disclose that criminal background. So that's one reason. And then it depends on the certain visas. Like if you don't meet the requirements, I will not petition for you. So that's something that if you go to the wrong attorney and they're just looking to make a quick buck, they could petition for you even though you don't meet the requirements and kind of lead you down a dead end. So we don't do that, but I've heard of that happening with other legal representation.
Will a good attorney make sure you're going to get approved first time?
Yes, and it is actually an oath that we make that we are performing our job and we're giving advice in good faith. So for me, I don't know about what everyone else thinks, but for me, my word is everything. And when I'm helping a client, if I feel that they're not going to get approved, and I know, right? I can ask a series of questions. I know. If I feel that they're not going to be approved, I don't even file their petition because I don't want to waste their time or money and get their hope.
Except if you don't disclose a criminal record, that's kind of on you.
Right. That's so, you know, I can't read your mind, but yeah.
There's a limit to your powers, you know.
Yeah.
We spoke before about STEM and healthcare. Are there any other industries right now the US government is looking favorably upon when it comes to assessing visa applications?
So it's primarily STEM and then anyone with an advanced degree. So if you have a master's degree or higher, there's more options. And then, like we discussed, if you have money, if you
Money
have
talks.
money talks, if you have money, you're gonna have a way easier time getting your green card than if you don't.
I
So
spoke to some immigration consultants for Canada recently who said the process in Canada is inherently a little bit ageist. And if you're over a certain age or if you're retired, there isn't really a pathway for you. Is that kind of the same with the USA? Do they take visa applications from retirees and people say over the magical age of 40?
no, I don't really think that's a factor. As long as you either have money or you have the degree or the qualifications, then you'll be fine.
Okay, so you can be 65 and retired, but with a chunk of cash and
Yes.
you can get through.
You'll have your green card in 10 months.
Finally, Mena, at the time of recording this, the US is preparing for a change of president. What do you think the next 4 years will look like in terms of immigration under President Trump?
So historically, we saw that when President Trump was in office the last time, that there was kind of a defunding of USCIS, which resulted in longer wait times. Some privileges were taken away. For example, if you're on a certain visa like H-1B, your spouse could no longer work. Adjustment of status under certain visas was taken away. So that's what we've seen historically. However, during his campaign, he made certain promises. I don't know if you recall, he said that for those who graduate from a U.S. institution, secondary school, that he would make a pathway for green cards. So he's made certain claims and promises the second time around. And he's also said that the first time he was kind of thrown into it, his first time being president, I guess he didn't really know what was going on. So I'm hopeful that this time around, he'll put some pathways in for legal immigration. I think his main priority is going to be to get rid of the illegal immigration side of things. That's been a problem in this country for a very, very long time. So I'm hopeful that it will change, but as we've seen historically, it's caused some issues.
And what do you think the flow on effect of hypothetically cleaning up illegal immigration might be for legal immigration pathways? Do you think it opens the door for different types of skills to be needed? We know that illegal immigrants might typically be working some particular labor jobs that will still be needed, for example.
I think that if the legal problem is solved, that there won't be as much of a backlog because there's only a certain amount of green cards that the US issues in any given year in certain categories. And because we have such a big illegal issue here, a lot of those illegal immigrants then somehow transition onto the legal pathway, and then they occupy those green cards and kind of max out the amount that are eligible to be given out in a year. So I think that might help with the backlog. Although I think that if the legal pathway was better designed, was easier to maneuver, there wasn't such a wait time, and USCIS had proper funding, then we wouldn't have so many illegals because they'd have a proper pathway. I don't think anyone wakes up and says, I would love to be legal.
Illegal in the USA, that's my dream.
Nobody wants that. For example, if you have a parent who is a US citizen and they want to sponsor their son or daughter who's over the age of 21, it's a 10-year wait. That is totally unreasonable. Totally unreasonable. And then they wonder why people are coming and staying illegal. They want to be with their family, you know? So I think if the system improved, the legal pathway was easier and more organized and easier to navigate, that would avoid a lot of the problems that we have in and of itself, and we wouldn't have to have such a mass deportation campaign, right?
With all the flow-on effects that will come from that.
Right.
Mena, it's been great to have you on the Expat Focus podcast today to speak all things immigration to the USA and how you go about it as a foreigner. Where can people find you if they'd like some specific advice?
So it's maimonelegal.com. We also have movetotheusa.ca. So that's our fun little slogan website. And we also have a Facebook group for Canadians, but anyone can join to get advice. It's Canadians moving to Florida and the USA. So that's a fun place. We're on there all the time. People are commenting questions and we're answering them. So even if you're from Australia or anywhere else, feel free to join. Just because you're not Canadian doesn't mean you're not welcome.
Oh, that's
So,
nice.
and you can give me a call, 888-863-3207. And we'd be happy to set up. We have a free 20-minute call that my staff provides. And if you wanted to meet with me for an hour, it would be a paid $350 consultation. And I would take care of you from there.
That's it for today. Are you working on a move stateside? Are you taking the option where you're investing $800K? Or maybe you're working on starting a business for $100,000. Perhaps you're a lucky duck and have a job offer in healthcare or STEM. Let us know in the comments on our YouTube channel. Just search for Expat Focus. If you like this episode, let us know by leaving a review wherever you like to listen to the show, and I'll catch you next time.